Hello everybody, welcome to Viewer's Choice. Thank you for coming. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Pepe Cuenca. I am the current chess grandmaster here in St. Louis, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. What are we doing here today? Well, we are going to analyze some games from the YouTube channel users. I would like to invite you to participate during the class, so it will be much more fun. So please, you have any questions, comments, etc., so please don't hesitate to ask. Same for the YouTube people. I see there are some people already joining the class, so please ask whatever you want to ask about the positions, etc. And yeah, so I brought some interesting games today to analyze. The first one corresponds to a game played in Greece, in the Rio Greece Championship Under 16 between Triantafilidis Mihail versus Karousos-Theodorakis. Yeah, hard surnames, but interesting game. All right, so let's start with it. So white played e4, c5, knight f3, d6. Here there are several options available for white. So you could go bishop b5, one of the most solid approaches, right, against the Najdorf, or the open Sicilian, d4. So c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and a6. You guys know how this defense is called? What kind of Sicilian do we have here? Najdorf. The Najdorf, yeah. Okay, so this is Najdorf, one of the most aggressive opponents. You can play with the black pieces. And yes, also, moreover, you can play here something like g6. This is the dragon, one of the most aggressive lines also for black. Or you can play knight c6, the classical Sicilian, right? So there are a lot of different approaches here for black. And here after a6, again, there are several alternatives for white here. So, for example, bishop g5, h3 is a move that I really like, bishop e2, and as in the game happened, f3. Going for the English attack, right? So basically, white's idea is just to go to bishop e3, queen d2, long castle, and then start attacking on the king side like g4, h4, and later g5, right? Here, black plays e5. You could say that this is not a very good move, maybe, because now d5, it's a weak square. But the thing is, you're kicking this knight from d4, and then you're winning some tempi, right? Okay, so knight b3, the main move, and bishop e6. This bishop comes here to e6 to fight for the d5 square, right? So in many lines, black will try to go d5, right? And here, black's counterplay is based on the open c file, right? So as we were saying, this king is gonna go probably to c1 after some long castling, and then a rook on c8 will be perfectly placed, right? Black is also trying to go something like b5 and will try to start attacking on the queen side. So bishop e3, and now, what do you guys think about the move d5 here in this position? Is it a good move? Is it a bad move? People from YouTube as well. Looks natural, right? Or not? You think it's possible to go for it?
Yeah, it kind of weakens the position a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, the point is, after d5, you can take everything. E takes d5, knight takes d5, knight takes d5. And if you take with the bishop, what's the best move here for white? Hey. So, what will you play here with the white pieces? Any suggestions there? h4, maybe? King f2? No, right? So c4 is the key. And when this bishop goes back to e6, you can just capture exactly. Chance this, he said c4. And now black cannot castle. After king d8, there's a lot of trouble for black here in this position, right? So you're going to go rook d1 or even long castling and then some knight c5 or something. And you're even going to get the bishop pair at this point, right? So that's why d5 is not a really good move. Same happens if black takes with the queen. Queen takes d5, you take on d5, bishop takes on d5, long castles, bishop e6, and now knight c5 or even knight a5 attacking this pawn on b7, and black's position is not very good. So that's why nobody plays here d5, even though it looks like a very reasonable move, right? But everybody instead plays here bishop e7. You want to go short castle here in this position and then develop your pieces. So white went queen d2 here in this position. Very natural move, aiming to go long castling here, and you want to start your attack on the king side, right? Short castle, long castle, and knight b d7. This knight is better placed on d7 than on c8. Why? Because c4 is a really interesting square. And later you want to go b5 here in this position, and this knight can join the party by a b6, where you are aiming to go to c4, right? c4 is a really interesting square for the knight, since from here you're attacking the queen and the bishop, right? So how do you start attacking now on the king side for white? g3. You want to go g3 here? Orlando, what would you play here with the white pieces? How do you start attacking on the king side?
In the king side, need to move the pawns.
Exactly. You need to move the pawns. So a natural move would be
h4.
Exactly. h4 would be a really natural move. And the other one?
g4.
g4. Yeah. g4 is pretty natural. You want to go g5, kick this knight back from f6, and then you gain more control on the weak square d5, right? So that's why g4 is maybe the best move in this position. And black went here b5. All right, so a pretty natural move. As I told you, there are some b4s coming. Also knight b6, intend to go knight c4. And here, white played rook g1. It's not the main move. The main move is g5, but okay, rook g1 supports the g pawn whenever you go g5 later, so rook g1 makes some sense, right? Knight b6 was played here, and now it's a really important moment because black's threatening to jump on c4. So how would you stop that? What would you play here with the black pieces? Or maybe you want to continue attacking on the king side. Let's say g5, knight h5, and h4. So how do you continue here with the black pieces? Any suggestions? Any candidate moves? Knight c4, it's the most natural move. You attack the queen and the bishop, and you're forcing white to give the bishop pair. I never want to lose this bishop, because if you move the queen like to f2 or something, then black can capture on e3, and the dark squares are extremely weak for white. So you have this beautiful square on f4 to jump with your knight, and now even better. So that's why maybe you have to take on c4. But now black has a really good move here in this position. You take with the bishop or you take with the pawn? So people from YouTube, you can also say something. You take with the b pawn, you take with the bishop?
Take with the pawn, open the b5.
Exactly. Taking with the pawn is the best option, since this knight has to go to a1, right? It's a really ugly square. Knight to a1 in the corner, punish knight. And now you're going to attack a lot on the b file. Rook b8, queen a5, something like this. This knight is joining the party by f4 as well. So b takes c4, and black is much better. You also got the bishop pair, so, and the knight on a1 is basically doing nothing. So I would take with the pawn as well. But there is a really good move here in this position after knight b6. It's a very typical move in these positions. How do you stop knight c4? Exactly, knight a5. Best move in the positions by far. So you control c4, and then you're also threatening to jump to c6. Right? So for example, if black plays something like knight c4, you can even take on c4, b takes c4, g5, knight h5, and knight d5. And this pawn on c4 is hanging. You're also threatening to take on e7, followed by queen d6. There are too many threats. You take on d5. Now the light squares are extremely weak for black. The c4 pawn is gonna fall sooner or later, and white is just better in this position. So that's why black didn't go for knight c4 in this position, but instead he tried to cover the c6 square. Because if you do something stupid like, let's say, rook e8, then knight c6 comes, followed by knight takes e7 and queen d6. So you also have to parry that threat. How you parry that threat? By playing queen c7. That's a really natural move, right? So knight c6 not possible anymore. And here white went g5. g5, it's a really natural move, so this knight is not going to control g5 anymore. It has to go probably to h5 as it went in the game. And here, the best move in the position was knight to d5, but white player went king to b1. And now there's a really good move for black in this position. You always have to take in account the unprotected pieces. So the knight on a5 is more or less unprotected. So there was a really good reaction here for black in this position. It's not an easy move, but the best move is d5 here in this position. Crazy. Because after e takes e5, knight takes d5, knight takes e5, bishop takes, and now let's say queen takes, the knight on a5 was hanging. So, and also the rook on d1 is unprotected. So after rook a d8, basically you have nowhere to go and white is losing, right? You cannot protect the rook on d1. Right? So that's why d5 was a really good move. Maybe black can take on d5 and then play something like queen f2. So after knight f4, position is very, very unclear, right? You could take on a5, but then the bishop on d5 is also hanging. Maybe black is a little bit better, but nothing special, right? But okay, white went king b1, and now rook ac8. A really natural move here, so putting pressure on the c file. And now, what do you play here with the white pieces? This knight has come to h5, so now you can jump to d5. And this is what white player did here. So knight d5. The thing is, whenever black takes on d5, after e takes d5, you're going to have a really tasty square for your knight, right? The knight from a5, whenever there is a pawn on d5, it could go to c6 and block the c file, right? And put some pressure on the e7 bishop, right? So basically, black is forced to take on d5, e takes d5, and bishop f5. Do you think that bishop d5 is a possible move here?
After taking the bishop and the checking c2 doesn't seem to be much more there, no?
Exactly. So after queen takes d5, you could think that black's only move is queen c2. That's the first move that comes to our minds, right? But then after king c2, I think white can just go king a1 and nothing really happens here. So you're going to develop your bishop by d3, then there's no queen c1 checkmate or something. The bishop is protecting this important square, so queen c2 is not the move, but instead you can take on a5, right? But this position, it's really interesting because white has sacrificed a pawn, but we got the bishop pair, and after something like h4, position is really, really interesting. You want to go c4, some positions, you got good control on the c5 square, The bishop is going to come to d3. This knight is actually doing nothing on h5. Whenever you go to f4, we can just take it and then play h5 and increase the pressure because there are some g6 nasty ideas, right? This diagonal is extremely weak, and it's not easy for black to exchange heavy pieces, right? Since c5 is controlled. So this position was very interesting and very unclear, really. But okay, black went bishop f5, and now how do you stop black's coming to c2? So knight c6. Now you block the c file. The knight is perfectly placed on c6. Now black has to do something. I mean, if black doesn't do anything, we're just gonna play bishop d3, exchange this light squares bishops. After queen takes e3, we're gonna play some h4, and then this knight is stopping all black's counterplay, right? So that's why black felt it had to open the position by playing f6 here, trying to open the f file, and now white went h4. King h8, really natural move. So you want to be in front of this rook on g1, right? And bishop d3. Takes, and black went f takes g5. H takes g5, and now what do you think? It's possible to take on f3? What's white's main threat in this position? So let's say black takes on h3. What will you play here? Rook h1. Somebody's saying in the YouTube channel. Rook h1. Okay, rook h1 makes a lot of sense, right? Because you can never play knight f4 because of checkmate on h7, right? But the thing is, I think black can play here g6. And more or less, this king is safe now. Because there's no way of opening the h file, right? And the knight on h5 is protected. So instead of rook h1, what do we play first? Exactly. Thomas Kilkulen, he said g6. That's a really good move here in this position. Because basically, black's forced to play h6, so black never wants to open the h file, right? After h takes e field, this is just suicide for black, right? After something like queen g6, then some rooks are coming to the h file and g file, so you got to close the position after h6. But now, queen e2, it's a really good move. If the rook goes to f5, we play queen to g4. And basically, there are too many threats. And if you go to h3, what would you play here? White wins in 2 moves. I always talk about forcing moves. I insist a lot in this, but just first of all, take in account captures, checks, and threats. So what can you capture here in this position? We can capture the b5 pawn, right? This is pretty stupid, right? But following this method, you start counting all the possible captures. We just say that this is just nonsense, right? So then we can capture the h5 knight, the h6 pawn. Who says it?
97.
Exactly, 97. Queen takes e7, and now?
Queen g4.
Exactly. What can you threat now in this position?
Yeah,
So yeah, so unprotected pieces. We always have to take them in account. So queen g4 just threatens the 2 rooks, and white wins. So pretty simple method, right? And I guarantee you're going to solve a lot of difficult puzzles. This is what we do in Puzzle Paradise class. We always follow this forcing move method. Okay, so rook f3 was not possible. g6 was played. And now queen to a4. Queen a3 was interesting, but maybe too greedy in order to go for the a6 pawn. Queen e4 is a move that makes a lot of sense. You centralize your queen, you protect your only weakness, and now you want to improve your pieces, right? Okay, so rook f5 was played, and now rook d3. This rook on d3 is well placed because you are protecting f3 indirectly, and also you want to go rook a3 at some point. It's hard for black to protect the a6 pawn. Maybe you want to go rook a8 or something, but that's too passive too. So rook c to f8, putting pressure on f3, and now bishop d2. Simple move. Now you protect f3. There are also some ideas related by bringing this bishop to a5 or b4 and putting pressure on d6 later. But mainly you just want to protect f3, right? And now knight f4 was played. Attacking the rook, rook a3. We are attacking the a6 pawn. And here knight h3 was played. Looks extremely natural to me since we are attacking the rook on g1 and also the pawn on g5. Here, maybe the best move was knight takes e7. You're also attacking this rook. Queen takes e7, rook g3, knight f4, and rook a6. And white's a pawn up. But the white player decided to go for a really interesting variation. He played rook h1 here, allowing this fork. But the position gets really messy at this point. So, what's white's idea after knight f2? Rook h7, and after king h7? Queen h4, and after king g8? Yeah, okay. This is the first idea that comes to our minds. So rook h7, actually it's the only move, right? Because if you move the queen, like let's say if you move the queen, let's say queen h4, then just knight h1, right? And black's an exchange up and nothing to worry about. So rook h7, king h7, queen h4, king g8. But then if you want to capture the knight on f2, then bishop g5, and again, black is an exchange up, and I think position is perfectly fine for black. So white's idea was much more interesting. So after rook h7, king h7, queen h4, king g8, there's a better move for white here in this position. Exactly, rook a6. Great move. What's the threat? Rook a7. And it's really hard for black to stop rook a7. There was only one way to save this position for black. Let's see if you can find it. Rook f7. This is what the black player played in the game, and this is losing because of rook a7. Rook a7, and now what do you do? Okay, it's a little bit harder because after queen a7, knight a7, there's rook h7 here. Queen f2, rook h1, bishop c1, bishop g5. White's gonna lose this piece, but after a3, rook c1, king a2, look at this pawn. It's gonna fall, and white has too many pass pawns. So the game continued. King g7, knight takes b5, rook d1, and knight takes e6, rook d5, queen a7, and this king is also very weak. And after some moves, black had to resign. Okay, we got 3 pass pawns, a safe king. This pawn on g6 is gonna fall as well, and black had to resign. But there was a brilliant move for black in order to save the game. Let's see if you guys can find it. So rook h7, queen h4, king g8, rook a6, and this is the key moment.
Do you just have to give back the exchange with rook b8?
Rook b8. I didn't analyze this move, but let's do it all together here. Rook b8. Okay, pretty interesting. So now after rook a7, you just want to go rook b7. But that has a drawback. that you are not protecting the back rank anymore. So after rook a7, only move rook b7, now you can play maybe rook a8. Check. No, because there is rook f8, right? So let's try to find the solution here. Very interesting move. Rook b8. So rook a7, rook b7, rook a8, rook f8, right? Nothing really happens. I guess at least you can take on b8 and then take on f2. And white should be better in that position. But there are also moves like queen h6 here, which are very, very interesting. Queen h6. How do you protect the g6 pawn? Looks tasty. King f7 runs into queen h7, right? And then this looks really, really dangerous. Yeah, the g6 pawn is gonna fall. So I guess queen h6 is very interesting, and also, as I told you, this line should be very good as well for white here. Queen f2. This king is in a much safer place than black's king. All right. So rook b8 not the solution. What's the solution here after rook a6? King f7. Lucas do 84-100 is saying. King f7. King f7 runs into rook a7 again, right? So, no. Rook 8 to f7. I think same problem. Rook a7. So, the move is rook f3. Because now what happens after rook a7? Can you find the solution here for black? Actually, I think black's winning here. Yes, black's winning. Yes, queen takes a7, knight takes a7, and now? Exactly, rook a3. Back rank problems. Back rank problems. Okay, so this queen has to go away. Let's say queen b4, and now rook h1, bishop c1, and now bishop g5. And this is the same line as happened in the game, but with a piece up for black, yeah? Okay, so this was the game, and very interesting sacrifice on h7. And after rook a6, as I told you, rook f7 was played, rook a7, and white won the game. So I'm going to show you another game. I have 4 games ready for today's class. So this is a much simpler game. Let me just show you. Yes, this is a game from the user Jakub. He was driving the white pieces. d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3. 2 main options here for black. One of them is the Grunfeld, which is played in the top level in a lot of games. And the other one is to play bishop g7 in order to go for which opening? How do you call this opening with black? King's Indian. Yeah, one of my favorites. I have been playing the King's Indian my whole life. It's really aggressive, and you're aiming to get a lot of double-edged positions. So bishop g7. Basically, you concede the center for the white player, and then you want to break it by some e5 or c5. So knight f3, short castle, and here the main move goes after e4. But instead, in this game, white went bishop g5. Really natural move, developing your minor pieces. So basically, you want to continue with e3, bishop e2, or bishop d3, and then short castle. So, pretty natural move. Bishop g5, d6 was played, and now e3. Black played c6 in order maybe to develop the queen via a5 at some point, bishop e2, knight bd7, queen c2, and h6. What do you think about this h6 move? It's pretty natural, right? So bishop h4, and now I want to ask you, what do you think black should play here in this position? There are a lot of decent options here for black. Sorry?
Usually goes for e5.
e5. That's the most natural move in the position. What do you think about trying to get the bishop pair? How you get the bishop pair here? G5, and after bishop G3? Knight H5. You fell in the same trick.
Oh, I didn't like it.
Let's try to understand what happened. So, black player went G5 in order to get the bishop pair, bishop G3, Knight H5. Now, of course, you want to take on G3 and then play something like E5, and black would be in good shape. Let's say after short castle, knight takes G3, H takes G3 and E5, something like this. You got the bishop pair, you got nice center, you want to continue maybe with F5, Queen E7, and I would say black is even better. But tactical problems. What happens after Knight H5? Knight G5 wins, at least a pawn. The problem is, normally, there's this intermediate move here. But after knight takes e3, what do you think? You take with the f pawn or with the h pawn? H pawn. Because now, yeah, exactly. If this rook was on e8, you could take on g5 and then run away to f8, right? But the problem is now that after h takes e5, queen h7 mate.
But you don't need to take, right?
Sorry?
After knight g3, you can directly go queen h7, right?
Yeah, that's even better, yeah? That's even better, yeah? Queen h7, exactly. This is too deep, h takes g3, yeah? So knight g5, sorry. And in the game, black realized about the problem now, and he had to take on g5. H takes c5, bishop takes h5. This is only a matter of time now, but there are some tricks that black player can pose now. So e5 was played, long castle, and now I wanted to show you this line. So in the game, bishop, knight f6 was played, but here I wanted to show you this e takes e4, e takes e4, and now there's a good move for black here, which creates a lot of mess. What's the best move for black here? Come on, YouTube guys. Do you see it?
Maybe g4?
G4, that's a very good move. Because now white can't take on g4 because of queen g5, and you are actually threatening queen g5. So how do you stop queen g5? First move that comes to your mind? Quick?
h4.
h4. Great. Now, boom, knight f6. The bishop is trapped. So basically, h4 loses. So that's why g4 was creating some trouble. But here, for example, f4, and after knight f6, bishop h4, right? With the pawn on h4, this ping was not possible. Now it is, and white should be better. But okay, in the game, Jakub's opponent played knight f6 here. Sorry. e5, long castle, knight f6, bishop e2, and this position is extremely good for white. You're going to play h4, you're going to open the h file, and basically it's going to be checkmate in few moves. Queen c7, also there was some pressure on e5, h4, g4 trying to close that position, h5, bishop h6, bishop h4, attacking the knight from f6, knight h7, bishop d3, attacking this knight, f5, de, c5, in order to give this square for the bishop. And now, after b5 was played, white can't win more material. How do you win more material? All right, let's say after cb, ab. Again, forcing moves, captures, checks, and threats. Can we check? Yes. Queen b3. Does it improve our position? I don't know, because after king h8, looks like nothing happens, right? Bishop c4, that's the other possibility. King h8. Those are the checks. Captures, bishop f5, stupid move. There are no more captures, right? No. Threats. Can we threat checkmate? Can we threat a queen? Exactly. You see this method? It works. Knight d5, you're threatening the queen. He can't take, and then when the queen moves, what do you play? Let's say queen b7. Forcing moves, checks. Knight e7, and then captures. c6, that's okay, that's risky. That's risky. Yeah, there's this queen and king on the c file. You want to open it? Maybe it works, but it looks extremely risky, right? But there's another capture here. Knight f5, right? And after bishop takes, now rook a2 is not working because of what? This is an easy one, yeah? There are many moves, but there is one good move which wins on the spot, I guess. Rook d7, right? Right? Yeah, okay, queen takes, rook a1. Yeah, okay, it's a little bit more complicated, but let's say king d2, rook h1, and now queen g6. Right, so it's winning. It's winning. So, yeah, this was the game by Jakub. So he wanted to get the bishop pair, but there were a lot of tactical problems with this knight g5. Whoop, sorry. So let's check another game. For example, a Larsen game. So, and we have a message from the user. So it says, hello, St. Louis Chess Club. I am a frequent viewer of your videos. I recently played a fun 8-minute game that I hope you show. I like this game for a couple of reasons. First of all, despite not being very clean, it is my highest rated win on the site. Also, I played f6 or move 13 while telling myself never play f6. Because I could not see how it could be punished. Nevertheless, it, as always, was a mistake. And you could show why, since my opponent did not see it. So we'll try to figure it out. My favorite part is that my move 26 is initially regarded as a mistake by Stockfish, but after a minute or so, it finds that it is actually the best move. I'm playing back. I'm about 1900 on the site, and my opponent was almost 2200. Thanks. All right, so let's check the game. b3. The Larsen. My favorite reply or answer against b3 is e5. Okay. Bishop b2, knight c6, e3, knight f6, bishop b5, and bishop d6. This is what I normally play against the Larsen. So black's idea is just to kick this bishop from b5. Normally white takes on c6, you take back with the pawn, and black is more or less okay. But okay, here black goes d5, bishop b2, and c5, grabbing some space in the center. It's pretty natural. e3 and bishop f5. Looks also good. So I want to go knight c6, e6, and the bishop is out of the chain, the pawn chain, right? Knight f3, knight c6, and now the fight is normally centered on the e5 square. So how do you eliminate a piece from e5? And also at the same time you develop a piece. Bishop where? Bishop b5, right? The most natural move, pinning this knight. also you gain more control on the e5 square. Queen c7, short castle, e6. And here I really like c4. c4 aiming to go for some isolated pawn structure after knight f6, cd, ed, and d4. And this is very, very comfortable for white. But okay, he decided to go for d3, pretty natural move, aiming to go knight bd2, maybe later e4 or even knight e5 followed by f4, and then supporting this knight from f3 too. Hello. So d3 was played, knight f6, and knight e5. So, as I told you, plan is knight b to d2 and f4. Bishop d6 was played, and f4. The only move, right? The only reasonable move, because if you play something like knight c6, you have lost the fight for the e5 square. B takes c6, you have to go to a4 or something. This looks pretty ugly, and now black has won the fight for the e5 square. So in order not to lose that fight, you play f4. Now black played a6, forcing white to capture on c6, right? So bishop takes c6, b takes c6, and knight d2. g4 was really interesting here. g4 forcing black to go to g6, and now something like, let's say, knight d2 or even queen e2, and you have a lot of space here and a lot of threats. Some f5 coming later, not now because the knight on e5 is hanging, some h4 move coming as well, and this bishop is indeed trouble. But okay, white went knight d2, and now black stops g4 by playing h5. Pretty natural. Knight d to f3, again, control of the e5 square. So till now, white has played a very decent game. Knight g4, what's black's idea? Would you take on g4? Yeah, looks risky, right? Because yeah, you open the H file and then could be dangerous, right? But okay, black's threatening e3. So you got to defend it. Like queen e2 or queen e1 are the most reasonable moves, right? White went queen e1 here. And now our user, he was asking, I wanted to play f6, but I was telling to myself, don't do it. I think it's a mistake, but I don't see why. Can you explain this to me? All right. Again, this is a mess. So here, white went knight takes e4, h takes e4, and actually the h file is open, and black started to get better in this position. But there is a brilliant move here for white. Okay, if you don't move the knight, you have to threaten something. What could you threat in this position?
E4.
E4, right. E4, very good move. That's why f6 was not the right move to play here. And now I know there are like 5 possible captures, that this is a mess, that sometimes we get too lazy to calculate everything, right? It happens to me. I don't know about you guys, but there are like 10 possible captures, so just want to go home. But after e4, we have to calculate at least f takes e5 and bishop h7, right? Let's start with f takes e5. The point is, I will just take on f5, and if black takes on f4, which is kind of forced, right? E takes f4, what will you play here with white? Yes? You're Adi, right? Yeah. Good to have you back, Adi. So, yeah, exactly. Queen takes e6, and after queen e7, what would you play here, Adi? Exactly, because now black can't play queen f7 since the bishop on d6 is hanging. So black has to move the king, let's say, to f8, and this position looks extremely ugly for black, right? So for example, rook a e1, and then knight g5. There are too many threats. Whoop, sorry. Okay, so f takes e5 doesn't work. You could take on f5 here, but then f takes e5, bishop e7, h3, this knight has to go back to h6, and for example now something like knight h4, putting pressure on f5, and then there are too many weaknesses here. Let's say short castle, you can play knight g6, and then the rook can't come to f7 because of e6, and if you go to e8 or something like that, you can play something like queen e2 and then attack the h5 pawn, right? So this doesn't look very good, but the question is, what happens after bishop h7? Because now it looks like we have to take on g4, but there is another good option for white here. Adi, what do you think? Black's king is on the center, right? How do we open files? Exactly. E takes d5 is a really good move. Because now, first thing, if black takes back, we can just now take on g4 and queen e6. The bishop is not on f5 anymore. e6 is not protected, and now after the check, we're going to capture the g4 pawn. White is much better. But what happens after f takes e5? We can just take back. Bishop f8 only move, because after bishop e7 there's this fork, right, with d6. I don't know why in Spanish we call this kind of, after bishop e7, bishop e7 in Spanish, for this kind of move with a pawn that threatens to put two pieces, we call it the underwear, like calzoncillos. Really strange. Don't ask me why. Yeah. So bishop f8 only move, d6, and this position is extremely good for white. We got 2 pawns for the piece. We're going to get a third one, like something at the bishop a3, and look at black pieces. The bishop of f8 can move. The knight will have to go back to h6. The king, better not to castle long side because it's extremely weak over there. There are some queen a5 moves coming. So basically white is much, much better. So the key move after f6 was e4. But this was a rapid gain, of course, and it's not easy to spot that move. So instead, white took on g4, h takes e4, and now the h file is open. So position is starting to look good for black. Knight h4 was played, and long castle for our user. And here, knight takes f5. I think this was not necessary. Not yet, right? Because, for example, you can play something like g3, and you want to keep this file closed, right? Maybe you want to start some sort of counterplay on the king side. But I think taking on f5 is not very smart, since now black's plan is too easy. So it's just trying to bring some pieces to the h file and then to put some pressure here. So knight f5 was played, e takes f5, and g3. Rook h3. Black is coming. Queen e2, rook h8, and we're getting to an important moment. Rook f2, queen f7, and here it's a really important moment. d4. I think this is a pretty natural move. So we have to start some sort of counterplay on the king side. Sorry, on the queen side, right? Since the king, it looks very weak here. But our user played a really tricky move. Queen h5. What are you threatening here with the black pieces?
Rook takes g3.
Exactly, that's the threat. How do you stop that? You want to take on a6, or you want to play prophylactically? Prophylaxis is really important. So before thinking in our own plans, we have to stop our opponent's plan. There's only one good move here for white.
Rook g2.
Exactly, rook g2. That's the best move. So there's no more rook g3, and it looks like these three pieces, they look nice there, but everything is well protected. And now we are the ones attacking on the queen side. This was the best move who was guaranteeing white a good position, but instead he was too greedy and he took the pawn on a6 with check. And after king d7, now he can't face the two threats that black is posing. Black is threatening to take on g3 and also on h2. So there's no way of stopping both. So that's why white started to give some checks. Queen b7, king e6, no more checks. He took on g7, and now what do we play? Rook g3 check, exactly, Adi. You can't take because there's checkmate on the h1 square, and after king f1, queen h3 check, king e2, give me another pawn, king d2, and now the brilliant move our user spotted in the game. He said that Stockfish was not recommending it. How do we finish our opponent? There are several moves. So the move was exactly bishop f4. This is how the game continued. And after rook f4, queen h2, and after king e3, rook h3, checkmate. This is how the game finished. So a pretty interesting game. The key moment of the game was this f6, and later white had to play prophylactically with this rook g2, and then everything could have happened in that position. All right, so last game before we move to the romantic era class. For this game, it's a French. Yeah, this game. Hi, this is a game I played in a rated league in England. Opening is the Albin-Alekhine-Chatard, and it is quite interesting. I am a big fan of your channel. Keep the great content coming. All right, so e4, e6. This is a French defense. d4, d5, and knight c3. Different alternatives here for white. The Tarrasch variation, knight d2. You can also play e5, right? Also this beautiful move, bishop d3. It's more interesting than you think. And the exchange variation, boring, right? Don't play that. But okay, white played knight c3, and here in the game, knight f6 was played. The classical variation of the French. Do you know how this variation is called after bishop b4? Wiener variation. Yeah, one of the most complicated openings. It's very difficult to understand the structures that arise after the Wiener. So black plays c5, a3, and then there are these double pawns. So basically white is trying to give to checkmate, otherwise it will suffer on the queen side. So whenever I take the white pieces, I don't manage to give to checkmate, and then I lose, and then when I get the white piece, the black pieces, then they checkmate me. So I never understand what's going on. So knight f6, bishop g5. The other alternative is e5 here, bishop g5, bishop e7, e5, knight d7, and h4. This pawn sacrifice is very interesting. It's called the Chatard variation. So basically, if black takes, h takes, queen takes, now white gains some tempi. After playing knight h3, let's say queen e7 and queen g4, and you're putting a lot of pressure on the king side. Let's say g6, knight g5, h5, and queen f4. White is going to go long castling, and there are some g4 ideas, and then there's a lot of pressure. That's why it's also interesting not to take the pawn on g5, but instead playing h6, which now is forcing white to take on e7 or to go back to e3 or to f4. The most natural move is bishop e7, queen takes e7, and f4, followed by knight f3, queen d2, and long castle. But here, white decided to retreat the bishop. Where would you retreat your bishop? To e3 or to f4? Yes, Adi?
I would do it on E3 for two reasons.
Yes.
One of my reasons is
Yeah.
Like I can play f4 and not like bishop e3 like I could keep attacking that square and then he couldn't play c5 and also I could play f4 f5.
Exactly. So very good. So basically you want to reinforce your pawn chain by f4 at some point, right? So you go to f4, basically after c5 you're not going to be able to protect your pawn chain, right? So black is destroying it. So that's why bishop e3 is the best move here, or bishop e7, but bishop e4 I would say it's a little bit dubious. But this is what happened in the game. Bishop f4, bishop b4 was played. What do you think about this move? What are you supposed to do here with the black pieces? You have a lack of space, right? So white has an spade advantage. So you have to break that pawn chain. Adi. c5. That was a move. c5, d takes e5, let's say knight c6. You don't have to capture immediately. You can put pressure on the central pawn, and after knight f3, for example, something like knight c5, and I really like black's position here. But okay, bishop b4, already not the best move, I would say. Queen g4, attacking the g7 pawn, bishop c3 check, b takes c3, and king f8. And now you can see that white position, it starts to look very good. So you want to go knight f3, bishop d3, short castle, or even h5, and continue attacking on the king side, right? Knight f3, knight c6 was played. Again, not with the spirit of the position. You want to break on c5 at some point. There are weaknesses here that you can attack with your queen, or you can even try to exchange this poor bishop, right? So the most problematic piece for the black player in the French is the light square bishop, because it doesn't enjoy proper diagonals. So one good idea is normally to try to exchange it for this good bishop, which is normally placed on d3 and with a lot of attacking perspectives, right? So one nice plan for black here is to play b6 and bishop a6, or to break on c5. But you play knight c6, again, c5 is not possible, and then, yeah, okay, you want to go knight e7 and try to protect your king, but still, you're wasting too much time. Bishop d3 was played, knight e7, and c4. What do you think about this move? I would say it's reasonable, because you got the bishop pair, you want to open the position, right? And black's king is not able to castle, so it's good to open lines. c5. Finally, it comes. c3, queen a5 was played, attacking c3. How you protect it? Bishop d2. Yeah, that's very reasonable. Bishop d2. Also, there is this available square for the queen on f4, where you can put some pressure on the f7 pawn. I have seen maneuvers like that, like rook a3, rook g3 as well on the French. Very interesting. Or if there's not the knight on f3, this rook can join the party via f3, attacking f7, which is one of the most weakest squares for the black side, right? So here, queen a6 was very interesting, since this bishop is unprotected, and then you're going to win this pawn. Let's say a4 takes and bishop e2. Still, the position remains extremely complicated, because this king is not very well placed, but queen a6 was maybe the move. All right, black played b5 here. Interesting move. C takes b5. The point is he wanted to recapture that pawn after playing c4. Bishop c2 and queen takes b5. But there is a huge drawback for black now. What's now the weakest diagonal for black? Look at this bishop. It's a very typical maneuver in the French. Adi?
The a3 to f8 diagonal is really bad, so we can maybe play bishop c1, bishop a4.
Exactly. That's really good, Adi. So white plan many times is to go a4, bishop c1, and bishop a3. And this bishop is so strong in this diagonal. So short castle was played, king g8 and a4. The queen has to go back and rook fe1. Of course, also possible to go bishop c1 straight away. I would have done that probably. But rook fe1 was played, knight f8. And I was checking this game and I couldn't understand why white didn't want to go h5. Because h5 actually stopped any black's activity on the king side, right? So there's no square available for this knight. So h5 is actually a really good move. And then you can continue slowly progressing, yeah? You can bring this bishop to c1 and a3, putting pressure on these two knights. Then you can remove, if you want, the knight from the f3 in order to start a pawn march on the king side. But h5 is necessary, actually, in this position. So knight h2 was played. I don't know, for some reason, he didn't want to go h5. So knight f5, a5, queen e8. Still, the position is very, very good for white here. Queen h3. Maybe now it was possible for black to play h5. He wants to go g4, but okay, queen d8, knight f3, going there and here, knight g6, g3. Again, h5 was very good. For some reason, he wanted to go g4 and g5 instead of h5 first. So this is a clear positional mistake. g3, knight f8, g4. Again, h5, the best move by far. Because after g5, what can you play now with black to close the position? h5, right? h5, and suddenly it's not that easy to continue attacking on the king side. Even though if black plays something really ugly like g6, now the king is more or less safe. You can bring the king later to g7, and then these pieces can go back to life. And the bishop on c1 here is attacking nothing. So that's why h5 is necessary in this kind of position. After having played h5, g5 is much more stronger. g5, knight f5. They didn't play h5 either. So now g takes h6, knight takes h6, king h1. This looks extremely dangerous for black though now, because the g file is open. And knight f5, h5, knight h7. So here a very interesting defensive idea was to keep this knight on f8, and after something like, let's say, knight g6, it's not that easy to proceed with the white pieces. Now this rook on h8 is doing a fantastic job. The thing is, after knight h7, rook g1, there are many threats now. Bishop d7 and queen to g4. And how do you stop white from taking on f5 and on g7? Do you find any solution? How do you stop mate in 2?
Running away.
Running away. Right. So king f8. Yeah, but after bishop takes, queen g7. Yeah, so let's say king f8. This is just hopeless, right? So takes, queen g7. So you don't want to lose the rook. You have to go to e7, and then boom, bishop a3, and black's losing. So they played queen f8. But now the killing move, what's the killing move here? We said this bishop was going to somewhere else. Yeah? A3. Exactly, bishop a3. Deviation. Now he's got to go. Or as in the game happened, knight e7 and bishop e7. And black had to resign. All right, so we analyzed 4 games from our users. I hope you liked the class. Now we're going to chess in the Romantic era, where we will talk about Adolf Anderssen, one of my favorite players. Thank you. Should I continue straight away or?